Hello, welcome to IT Security Labs. And this is our weekly live stream where we come here and display and learn some of the most in demand skills in cybersecurity. I mostly show you what I'm working on, how I'm learning, and everything. So if this is your first time, please consider subscribing to my channel. We actually do this every week at 9 p.m. Central Standard Time. So right now, I believe we are live on YouTube. Yes, we are. Thank you for joining me. Today's live stream is mostly about home labs because we are about to start something very brand new on this channel. We're going to design a lab from scratch. We're going to design a lab for us to quickly deploy and today's live stream is going to cover mostly what kind of lab is going to be best for you, how do you get started creating a lab, and what is the best way to get started. I'll share with you some of the things that I've learned and also show you some of my labs here that I've actually played with. And during that time, I'll be answering any questions that people might have. So if you have any questions for me, let me know in the comments section. Hello, BT. Thanks for joining. I appreciate you being here. Always. He's one of the regulars. Every live stream, I think he's always here. So thank you for joining. I appreciate it. And today, actually, I had planned to work on this CVE right here. And it didn't work out the way I wanted. I can show you how it ended up not working out for me, but it didn't work out well. I was trying to demo you how to work on Heartbleed and or Eternal Blue and how to detect it in here. But this detection engine didn't work with Windows 7. So because of that, we're going to design our lab and hopefully help somebody during this live stream. Let me just check here to make sure that I have everything. Awesome. Let's see, let's do this. All right, just give me 1 second. I'm just checking to make sure that everything is in order here. All right. So the first order of business is I posted 2 polls this week. One of them was asking people which firewall should be the best for people who want to learn. I was between Ubiquiti and also pfSense. And an overwhelming majority of people went with pfSense. I posted in our IT Security Labs group, and I also posted in the Home Labs group. And a lot of people, more than 50, I think, responded. Then the second poll that I did was on our YouTube channel, where I asked people what kind of videos they would like to see. And for the most part, people said they wanted to see Home Lab setup, especially if we can start from scratch. So today we are actually going to start that process. We're going to talk about why I'm going to be designing the lab that I'm designing and also the process that I'm going to take. So that's what I'm going to talk about. And during that time, I'm going to explain the thought process, which hopefully it will help you determine whether this is the right lab for you or not, and if there is another lab that you need to be looking at. So the first order of business, let's talk about the different types of labs that you can have. So right here in my home, you notice that I have a VMware lab set up. This is a server, full-blown rack mount server that is running in my basement. This is a Dell R710. As you can see here, I hope you can see this. It has 96 gigs of RAM. It's connected to an external device for storage via iSCSI. And this lab has evolved, and I've had this lab for years. I've deployed a lot of things here. This is one of my favorite labs. That's why I wanted to start with it. So if you are deciding to set up a home lab, you have to determine what your needs are. What is it that you want to learn? How much budget do you have? And also, how much time are you willing to dedicate to learning these things? And this lab right here, where you deploy a server, is going to be very, very helpful for someone who want to learn the skills that are needed from the bottom up. By that I mean, if you do not have a lot of experience in cybersecurity or in information security or in IT in general, I suggest that you start with something like this, because it gives you the ability to gain some skills that you would otherwise not get from anywhere else. The skills that you get setting up a lab like this include networking, because this thing is going to need you to connect it to the internet, and all these VMs need to have some connectivity. So by the time you're done setting this lab up, you're going to get the basics of networking at least, and it's going to force you to research more things about networking and connectivity and how to make sure that this thing is working. So networking is one of the things that you're going to learn when you set up a home lab in a VMware or on a server like the way that this is. Another skill that you're going to learn, which is very critical almost everywhere nowadays, is virtualization, of course. And in this case, I'm using VMware, which a lot of companies out there use VMware. That's why I chose this one. So you end up with virtualization skills. You learn that when you deploy machines, for example, like this elk sim here, you can take snapshots. You learn how virtualization interacts with the networking layer on the physical networking layer component. You learn a lot about virtualization in general, and nowadays it's almost close to impossible to really be successful without full grasp of what virtualization is and how it works. And it's really fun. So that's another skill that you're going to learn. If you take it even further, you can deploy tools like this time, let's see if I have it here. Yeah, Salt. Salt, just like Ansible, is going to teach you about, say, automating things in your environment. You get tired of deploying the same applications to servers all the time. You create an automation server. In this case, I'm using Salt. I've also used Ansible in the past. And then you just start automating things. So this is going to be a really good lab that you can use for learning those basic things. A lot of people who end up working in cybersecurity and succeeding have done these things thousands of times. They've been system administrators. They know how these things work. And as a pen tester, for example, you get in an environment where there's a SOAT management system. You'll probably want to test that. You see Ansible deployed out there. You see Puppet. You see Chef. You have to know what these things are. And that goes to that concept of you need to understand what you're attacking. You need to understand what you're protecting. And in this case, these are the things that you learn from deploying this lab. Hello, Matthew. Welcome to our live stream. I appreciate you joining today. And today we are actually talking about the different lab considerations and lab deployment options. I'm explaining the benefits of deploying a lab on a single server like what I have here and what people can learn. And I'm saying this one is going to give people the skills, more like those system administrator skills. You're going to learn how to deploy Linux servers, how to keep them updated, how to automate the installation of things. So as you can see here, I have this Wazoo server. I think it's running Ubuntu. I have CentOS running somewhere here. But most of my servers are going to be Ubuntu, but I think this is CentOS. So you get to learn how to interact with different Linux flavors. Even if you have never worked with Linux, this will be a good place to start, because you then begin to deploy projects. I don't believe in just sitting for a class and learning. I believe in actually just start deploying. If you say, oh, I don't know anything about Linux, pick a course that teaches you skills about Linux, then have a project that you're deploying in something like this. So this will be very, very helpful for anyone who is interested in that. So how much would this a lab set up like this cost someone? If just in case you're thinking, this lab includes a server, a Dell R710. It also includes some switches. In this case, layer 3 switches that are managed, which I'll be showing you the whole setup for this one. It also includes setting up some VLANs, meaning segmenting your network, your home network from this lab environment, because you do not want this lab to compromise your home or cause problems in your home network. So this is one of those considerations that you should choose, just in case you have one of those. And then, if this is not for you, and if you don't have the budget to say spend money on this server, then you might want to opt for something smaller. But we'll be shopping for a server. This one, I bought this particular server that you're looking at here for $400 several years ago, and it came with an external NAS device, which is connected through iSCSI. So you see, all these things I had to learn as things go, and I think it's a great example of how you can actually grow in your IT security skills by just deploying things. All right, so after setting this lab, if that's not for you, let's look at the VMware one. This one is just a normal lab. I use this, as you can see, these are different use cases, right? The one that I was showing you is for someone who wants to really learn things from the bottom up, from system administration, some networking skills, even some automation and virtualization and stuff like that. This one right here is very specific. You see, I have all the QOptics level 1 to 4 here. This is my pen testing lab. I have a pfSense firewall because I like to control and really know what's going on here. And when I have internet, because sometimes I want these machines to have internet, and pfSense allows me to do that. This is for people who want to just hone their skills on pen testing. And I mean by that, or if you just want to learn offensive skills, if you deploy this lab, we're assuming that you already know what you're attacking, which I hope before you start attacking things, take some time to learn them, right? So this is a minimal VMware running on my machine. This Mac right here that I'm running, which I'm also using for displaying here, has about 16 gigs of RAM. So the considerations before you deploy this lab is, do you have enough resources on your machine? Like, do you have a hard drive that works? You probably don't want to deploy this lab when your hard drive has only 60 gigs of storage, for example. So my hard drive here is about a terabyte SSD, which is really fast. Then I also have 16 gigs of RAM, and my CPU is pretty good. I don't know the actual specs for that, but because of that, I can run Kali Linux, pfSense, and one of these machines at any given time, attack these machines, and really hone my CTF skills in a very secure environment. This is going to be isolated. If you look here, the setup is very simple. My pfSense has two interfaces. This network adapter number 1, this is the one that's connected to the internet. Adapter number 2 is just VMnet. This is just a local network right here. But adapter number 1 allows me to connect to the internet with auto detect on Wi-Fi. So because of that, that's what I use to turn my Wi-Fi, my internet for this lab on and off. Every single one of these machines should just be set up to the host only network. Let's see if I can see this. They will be set up to this network right here, which is just a local network that goes through pfSense to go to the internet. And this is for those people who just want to learn offensive skills. You don't need to learn networking because you already know networking. You don't need to learn system administration skills or any automation stuff. And if you are there and you just want to get better at hacking, this is the lab that I highly recommend. I don't encourage you to start with this elaborate lab here. This lab will probably not do you much good. And every time you see me attack any machines on this channel, I don't put those machines in here. This is for my system administration skills. If I want to play with something interesting, I come and spin it in here. As you can see, I have a few things that I'm playing with right here. All right. So after this lab right here, there is another one that you can deploy. And in this case, that's if you are interested in learning cloud technologies. I have a lab in my Microsoft Azure, and I also have a lab in AWS. So let me show you my lab in Azure. Or I can show you the one in Google. I tried all three platforms, and you may be wondering why I went to every single cloud provider and created labs. It's because I wanted to see which one or what they look like. First of all, I just didn't like to not know. Then the second part was I also wanted to deploy a lab. Let me show you the one that I have in Google actually, or Azure. Let's see which one I can access here. And while I'm doing that, let me take a look at the comments. Thank you, Matthew, for answering. If your main goal is to learn offensive security skills, the best setup that you can have is to try the online platforms that are free. That is, try HackMe and also Hack the Box. I have done a lot of Hack the Box, and I made about 30 videos on this channel of me walking through some retired machines. It's the best platform, I think, so far about when you're just getting started. So I'm signing into my Azure lab so I can show you what a lab in Azure might look like. So if you're interested in setting one up there, and I'll show you the few things that you can learn in Azure. So I'm signing in with an account that I do not care about, so you can see the email address. All right, let's sign in with that one. Let's see. Someone says, can Azure block you if you use it for hacking? If you're hacking other people, yeah, they will block you for sure. But if you're using for your own learning purposes, I think that's fine. I've used Azure, and that's what I'm going to cover here. I used Azure for deploying things like honeypots. I do not want to deploy a honeypot and give it internet access and put it right here. In this lab, I run some things that I care about and that I want to keep safe, and I don't trust honeypots in here. So because of that, I'll just come to Azure and deploy a honeypot that way. So yeah, Azure, you can use it for learning a lot of things. So here's a simple Azure lab that you can set up. And as you can see, I used this lab for a class that I was teaching a month ago. And I think it's a very good way of showing how things can be. There's 3 machines here in this lab. There's a Jumpbox provisioner, which is an Ubuntu machine that you use to jump from your home to get to Azure. Then here's an ELK server, and here's a DEM vulnerable web app machine. So if you're learning, say, pen testing, you can have Kali Linux. So what this lab was being used for was to forward logs when you're attacking this DEM vulnerable web app machine to ELK, which is all I show you, the Elastic SIEM solution. And that's what this is used for. Here is the catch though. If you do not want to deal with having a lab at your home, you can just go to Azure. The unfortunate part is that Azure can get expensive very quickly. Very, very quickly. The ELK server, for it to run, for example, comfortably, you need at least 16 gigs of RAM here. So if you have the budget and also the discipline to remember to power these machines off and also really streamline this. You can deploy a lot of things here and learn a lot of things. So this can be really good for other people if you are just interested in doing this. So yeah, this is what in Azure, at least a sample Azure lab would look like if people are deploying it there. Things that you can learn from here: you learn how networking in a cloud platform works. So as you can see, I have resource groups here. You can have security groups in your Azure environment. You can have firewall rules that you need to create in here to make sure that it works. So you do learn cloud platforms, and it's very, very good because a lot of employers out there want people who know how to interact with these cloud environments, and also you want to make sure that you're familiar with them. Even if you want to be a pen tester, you'll be pen testing environments that look like this. So one way or another, you cannot escape the cloud. You are just going to need to decide when you want to learn about it and how you want to learn about it and which skills you want to learn. And for this particular case, I was doing some hacking and also some log management stuff. And it's very interesting. So that's another lab that you can play with if you're interested in setting up a home lab. Let me just check here. All right, so if you joined us late, I was just showing the different options that you can take to deploy a home lab for learning really good information security skills. And what we cover the most is your needs are going to differ. Everyone's needs are different. And for example, I'm showing you this Azure lab here. Don't mind this email address. This is the email address that you can email me if you want to get in touch with me. I check it once in a while. You can use this Azure lab to hone your cloud environment skills. You want to learn about networking and how resource groups work. And once you know one of these cloud platforms, they're all the same, pretty much. They all work the same. I wouldn't worry too much about not knowing too much. Then if you are interested in learning from the beginning, from the start, people encourage you to know system administration skills, some networking skills. Set up a lab like this one where you have real hardware. I encourage you to have a layer 3 switch. Make sure that you can manage it. A real firewall. Be it, I don't care what firewall it is, you just need to have a real firewall that you can monitor and log and look at the firewall rules. Use that firewall also to really allow and restrict things. And for that, I encourage people to have a real server. Then you can actually scale, and within that server you can have virtualization, which is also really good. And from there you can even add more storage like iSCSI. You learn more about NFS shares from this and also other things. But if you are just good on those skills, you have good network administration skills, then set up something simple like this where you just have even without pfSense, just a VirtualBox or VMware Fusion or VMware Workstation will work for you. So those are the different lab considerations that you have to be honest with yourself. I hope you found the different options that you have to be very clear. Let me take a look at the comments very quickly here. Emmanuel said, how much do you pay for lab setup in Azure? In Azure, you get the first, you get $200 for free. So if you set up in Azure Lab today, they'll give you $200 worth of labbing for free. With that $200, you can lab for a long time. So if you just want to get started with Azure, just like even with AWS, they give you free credits. So this lab that I showed you in Azure here, you can run it for at least 2 weeks. And yeah, depending on how many machines you're running and how much resources you're taking, you can run it for free for a while. All you need to do is provide them with your credit card so that when your trial version or when the amount that they gave you runs out, they will charge you, which they charged me over $100 when my trial expired. So Azure can get expensive very quickly when you run out of the trial dollars. So that's why I encourage you to just spend some time set up one at home first if your goal is to learn long term. But if your goal is to just learn for a few weeks, just set up the Azure one. It can get very expensive quickly though. All right, so we went through the 3 different options on setting up a lab. Which one are we going to set up on this channel? We're going to set up this because, as you can see, I strongly believe in this lab because this lab has helped me a lot. I was at help desk when I started deploying this lab, and I moved. It didn't look like this. I delete machines when I don't need them anymore, depending on what I'm learning at any given time. I deploy those things, and right now, as you can see, this is a security-centered lab. I have a SIEM solution. I have Suricata. I have Zik. This is because I just want to learn the security engineering skills. But this lab evolves. We'll be setting this lab up. I'm going to start a series very soon. Actually, starting this week. We're going to buy a server. This lab can cost you some money. That's the upfront cost you need to pay. Servers are not free unless if you know an employer who is going to give you a server that is at least beefier. It's going to cost you a little bit of money upfront, but I can tell you that it's worth it. If you have the money and if you have the old hardware, somehow set this up. Once you set it up, you need to come up with a strategy on what to learn and how to approach it. And the best way to do that is sit down, be honest with yourself. What skills do you have? What skills don't you have? Do you know Linux? Then maybe deploying a lot of Linux machines in this lab is not going to help you. Do you know Windows? Have you worked with Active Directory? Do you know how Windows Active Directory works? If you don't, then set up a Windows Active Directory. This is a Windows Active Directory from 2012. You can tell I've had this for a long time. I set it up from scratch. I downloaded the ISO and created all my groups. And so because of that, I know exactly what Windows Directory looks like. When we talk about Kerberos, I know what it's like. So sit down, figure out which skills you want to learn. Then when you deploy this lab, you strategically learn those skills. And I will be sharing with you how and the best way to do that is right here. All right, let me answer this question very quickly. I think it's part of this. It says, I'm a 3rd-year engineering student. I've got a red hat. Oh, that's good. Is there a chance I can get it in the coming 3 years? Yes. If your goal is to ultimately end up with a CISSP, I think anyone can learn a lot of skills about the CISSP. Just remember, you need 5 years of experience working in at least 2 domains in information security for you to be awarded the certification. And also, it really does test your maturity level when it comes to understanding security and decision making and what security impact on a business is. So the CISSP is not for people who do not have a lot of industry experience. I think when I went for the CISSP and I passed the CISSP, I really found out that it's for people who want to be business leaders, mostly if you want to end up in management. But it's a really good certification. Anyone should get it, I think. All right. So now that we spoke about the different lab deployment options, here's why we need this lab. My goal is to show a lot of people who subscribe to this channel do not have a lot of experience with system administration and networking. I hope that during the process of us setting up this lab, you get to see and learn and get challenged about networking and system administration. I wholeheartedly believe that even though it's possible for you to get a job in cybersecurity and succeed without ever spending time tinkering with systems, I think it's best, and people who are really good at their security skills know how system administration works. So spend some time, deploy systems, understand what patch management looks like. How do you deploy updates to Windows machines? How do you deploy packages securely? How do you monitor a network? Because once you have a lab like this, the next thing you need to do is monitor it for usage. How do you know that your environment is secure? How do you know that it's performing well? So because of that, we'll be doing all that stuff. So we'll buy a server, which is a requirement. I already have a bunch of switches, but I'll share with you the best, cheapest switches out there that you can get. And we'll set them up from scratch. So starting this week, I will purchase a server. Budget for me is at least, with these specs here, I want at least 64 gigs of RAM on my server. The processor, in this case, if you look at this one, my CPU, the capacity here, 20 gigahertz. The CPU depends on what hardware you're going for, but the CPU is going to also matter in which type. So we'll be looking at that. I believe in buying these old Dell R720, R710, R something, because they are workhorses. They are really great. The other hardware platform that I recommend is Supermicro. It's really, really nice. I've worked with Supermicro and Dell's. So Dell or Supermicro, really great. R710 doesn't cost a lot of money to run, even if you run it 24/7. This lab that you're looking at right now cost me about $25 a month if I run it 24/7, if I run all these virtual machines. I know that because I monitor the power to this and send the data to Grafana. And $20 a month for my learning and my experience and also getting better at what I do, that's a very small price to pay. You pay even more if you run this lab in Azure. If you run all these machines that you're looking at here in Azure, you're looking at a lot of money. So yeah. If you just joined, we are talking about the different options to deploy a lab, and I showed people the 3 different ones, which is just this lab right here, which is a server. This one is a Dell R710. Let's do that. This is what it looks like. It looks like this. It's not $4,000, believe me. You can find them on eBay for cheap. Let's open this on eBay. So that's what I run in my home. So and then we spoke about the cloud. On this channel, we're going to set up a lab on a Dell R710 with the hope of learning sysadmin skills and also at the same time security skills. And by sysadmin skills, I mean you are going to learn how to manage a Windows Active Directory environment. You're going to learn how to deploy Linux machines. We're going to learn how to automate things using Ansible. Then we're also going to learn virtualization. The goal is not to teach you all these things step by step and make sure that you're fine. It's going to require you to spend some time learning on your own. Once we start, say, going through virtualization, and if you are really curious and you want to know about it, you're going to maybe find a course on virtualization and watch it, especially on Pluralsight. That's where I spend most of my time when I was learning. Then you're going to find a course on, say, VMware and just get yourself 2 hours worth of understanding. So I'm not going to be really teaching you step by step on what VMware is. I might mention it, but we're going to end up with a lab that works, and hopefully you can expand upon that and become better. Because really, no one can teach you everything. You are going to need to go out there and find yourself some stuff. So I hope it's clear for you. Gary, you said you just joined. All right. So after we deploy this lab, I will show you my lab in the basement. Right now it's a mess. I was going to show you today. It's really, really a mess. But we're going to be using this one. As far as the cores are concerned, 8 core is really low for me. I think 12 is what I would go for. But as you can see, this is on eBay right now with one terabyte for $270. Well, people are watching it. You might end up getting this for maybe $400. But I think $400 US for what you learn is going to be worth it. But let's just do a quick search, because this is what we'll be using. There they are. Here's an 8-core 48 gigs 199. Let's see, is that the buy it now price? The things that I'm looking for is the gig RAM is 48 gigs. 48 gigs is a lot of RAM for learning. So 48 is fine. 4 terabytes, that's also a lot of, oh, why don't we just buy this one? 8 core, that's where things might be a little, but this will do what we intend to do. This single server here for $199 will do it. So for under $300, you can find a decent server on eBay. Another thing that you can do if you work in IT is to go to your work and ask your employer, hey, can I have your old hardware? Just be blunt and say, I'm trying to learn. Can you please help me get some hardware? Go on Facebook Marketplace in your area if you have Facebook, and then look up Dell servers. I encourage you to look for R710 or R720 because that's what I've used. I can't speak for other platforms. This is not that loud. Someone here actually runs this server in their home, in the same room where they do most of their work, and they say it's fine. Mine is in the basement. It's not that loud, actually. So you can actually buy this. So that's what I will be buying this week. So I'll be getting one of these. Another component to this lab is going to be a firewall. My firewall of choice is pfSense. If you look, I deploy pfSense everywhere, including on this little lab here. So we're going to have a pfSense firewall with our lab, and I'll show you how to set up the pfSense firewall so that you can segment this lab from your home, and also make sure that your lab traffic doesn't really interfere too much with your home network, because you do not want to be causing problems for your family when creating labs. Believe me, when you are learning, you might create network broadcast storms. You might have machines that are vulnerable in this lab. You do not want those to end up compromising your significant others or everyone in your house. So we'll be segmenting these labs using pfSense. So pfSense, a layer 2 or layer 3 switch. If you don't know the difference between those, I'll explain to you. Layer 3 switches mostly allows us to do more than layer 2, in that we can do some routing there. My best option, especially when segmenting these labs, is to deploy VLANs. If you haven't worked with networking and segmentation, VLANs are the best way to really get your whole house segmented. Of course, you have to deal with tagging and all that stuff, deep stuff, but I'll make sure that at least when I go through that, I can explain what we are doing, and we can make sure that we have a lab that works. And then the last part is then deciding, what do we deploy? What is it that you can start right now learning? That's where you really need to dig deep in. And here's what I would do. Say I'm you, I want to get started, and Howard is talking about learning networking, system administration, Active Directory, the cloud, automation. It's overwhelming, right? So let's look for jobs in Osceola, Minnesota. And let's look for, say I want it to be a security analyst, right? First thing that you need to do is figure out, does the job that you are after even exist, right? I see there's a lot of companies here that are hiring for security analyst, but what if I wanted to be a security engineer? Wow, their jobs, there's at least page 1 of 100 jobs, so there's a lot of security engineer jobs that are required here. So let's look for one company. This is a healthcare company. What skills are they looking for? So this will be, before you even start wasting your time with a lab, let's reverse engineer this process. Before I start learning anything, is it going to help me? Is it something that is needed right now? Is it something that employers are looking for? Is it something that I can bring up when I go to an interview and talk about? What skills are they going to be looking for? Well, this one looks like they're paying a lot of money, and it's remote everywhere. All right, so first of all, they are looking for a bachelor's degree or equivalent work experience. So you don't necessarily have to have a bachelor's degree, a work experience. They are looking for certifications. or SIM specific training certification. So, but the most important thing for me before I start pursuing certifications is they're looking for proficiency in these antivirus. So first of all, now I'm going to need to know how antiviruses work. How can this job description inform me on the decisions that I'm going to make on this lab here? Well, I'll tell you. They want you to learn antivirus and things like host-based intrusion detection systems. Wazoo is a good example for that. This, you deploy agents out there that will act as host-based intrusion detection systems. You can then deploy sample antivirus software out there like Semantic Endpoint and others. So because of this job description here, I already know that if I don't know anything about antivirus and I was deployed in an enterprise environment, I'll come to this lab here, deploy a bunch of Windows machines, put antivirus on them, then maybe play with viruses on those environments, see what viruses and how they're detected on them. In this case, with this host-based intrusion detection system, I'm sending these logs to Elastic. Then I get to see them. If I show up to this employer, I'll tell them, I've worked with antiviruses, which is Semantic and others, but I've also worked with host-based intrusion detection systems like Wazoo, and Wazoo sends the logs to Elastic, and I was able to test with custom Python scripts that were mimicking ransomware. There's a Python script somewhere on GitHub that acts like ransomware. Then I did that to test whether Wazoo was going to detect it or not. Because at the end of the day, we want to make ourselves marketable. So first thing, start with job boards. Get yourself informed. If you are really good with Python, there's a Python script that you can use to parse these job boards and list the skills that are needed. So figure out which jobs you are interested in. Find out what they're really looking for. So let's look at this one again, another one, to make sure that we have a good experience here. Okay, so they want additional skills with LAN, WAN, and Windows networking, IP networking, Active Directory, Microsoft Exchange. Don't deploy Exchange in your lab environment. Scripting are beneficial. So there you go. So you know that if you can show up and you can learn these things, how do you learn Windows networking? Well, you're going to learn in this lab environment. So go to job boards, find out what employers are looking for, what skills you need, do some Googling. Some people even have a list of skills that you need to succeed in cybersecurity skills. Like, for example, a blog post that I reference all the time by Daniel Misler, he says, actually, let me do it again, just in case it's the first time here. If you go to Google, this might be the best resource that you can find. How to build a successful Infosec career, right here. So in this blog post right here, Daniel Misler explains what you need to do. So this is what I did, and this is what I followed. And he talks about learning these skills right here, system administration. And you'll find a lot of information here. And then the last part, once you have this lab and once we deploy this lab, is to, during the time that we're doing that, is to find out which certifications can you earn and which jobs can you get. So say if you're at help desk, you'll be working at your certifications at the same time. You'll be working on maybe making yourself more marketable. But most important things is developing the skills that you need to be able to succeed. And during that time, you're going to find things that you like. For example, I like certain things about all these things. I like network security monitoring. That's why I spend a lot of time with Suricata, Zeek, and IDS. I prefer to use, for example, Salt instead of Ansible, instead of Puppet. It's just my choice and also what I'm familiar with. I deployed Git in my environment. So you end up with things that you like. from deploying this lab. And if you're interested in us just going through this lab over the next month or so, subscribe to this channel. We're going to get started very soon. I know a few people already told me they already bought their server, which is great. Otherwise, you can deploy this on old hardware as well. It's just a matter of where you want to deploy it and how you want to deploy it. All right, I've done a lot of talking. Let me just... Someone says, why not Exchange? I used to be a Microsoft Exchange administrator. It's a pain in the ass to administer. I would not want to go back and administer, especially an on-premise Exchange server. This was poorly deployed. It's terrible. I ended up deploying Zimbra Mail instead of Exchange. And we booted Exchange out and put Zimbra Mail, which is a Linux-based mail server. Way better. But that's just me, though. A lot of people would disagree because Exchange is mainstream and all that. But that's a story for another day. That's what I wanted to cover today. Is the different ways to deploy a lab. You need to decide which one is best for you and what matches with your budget. If you don't have the money to deploy this one, maybe you want to look at a smaller, start small. You can even deploy a Windows Active Directory in here. Just know that this one will not scale. This is in VMware Workstation. Let me show you the one in VMware Fusion. What is that called? Let me show you the one in VirtualBox. So you see, I have them all. This one is running in VirtualBox. Here's a Windows Active Directory. Here's another Windows machine. And here's a Windows 7 client that we were going to attack today with Eternal Blue enabled on it. So as you can see, you can still learn these things without a server. I'm not saying you need to have a server or you need to have switches, but for you to be able to really learn a lot, I think that you can get cheap switches out there. Know how a switch works. Connect a switch and a firewall together and see how LACP works, how the negotiation works, see how port forwarding works, and maybe Ether channels work. You know, those things. So you can do it this way as well. Defcon 0 says he just moved to G Suite. Yes, G Suite is really good for business too. Yeah. I mean, I like Windows Exchange. I mean, Exchange is fine. If I were given the option between managing a Microsoft Exchange server, a Zimbra Mail server, or even G Suite, I will move to G Suite. I do not like Exchange at all. O365 made things easier though. So that's the thing. If you have an employer who is still managing their email, maybe they should go to Office 365. If they want to deploy it in-house and it's Exchange, that's going to be a full-time job. Exchange just, unless if you know how to configure it properly, it's not the best, at least. All right, so we spoke about all these different things. I just want to see what everybody's thinking. Let me look at it. Someone says, can you pass CSP after getting a job, but only after 5 years you get the cert? Yes, I think if I understand this, yeah, with the CISSP, you can take the exam and you don't become CISSP, you become an associate. Then you can earn the experience and get your certification after. So CISSP is definitely great. And it's actually mentioned here in this blog here. And I'll show you what he says. He says, he's a little extreme. He says, you need to get a CISSP for anyone who wants a career in InfoSec. Let me move myself to round. I don't know about that, but yeah. This is a certification that Daniel Misler suggests that you get, and it's really helpful. Yeah, you can pass the exam. The exam is not easy though. you just have to realize CSSP certification exam is not the easiest certification exam out there. It's actually harder than you think. PA says, can one set up lab environment on business grade machines or nuke etc? Oh yeah, you can definitely do that. Yeah. The choices that I make in my setup with say Dell R710, it's just that it's the first server that I had and it's very energy efficient. But you can set up this lab on a gaming PC like the one that I just showed you here. This PC right here is my old gaming PC. Let me show you the specs. Of course, it's beefed up, right? But this will do. I have 24 gigs of RAM here. Here is the processor. So, I mean, this machine is very beefy, especially with the 24 gigs of RAM. I can run a lot of things here with 24 gigs of RAM. And that's why I'm able to run this on VirtualBox. It's just limiting what I can do, especially when you end up deploying, monitoring things like Elastic. Then it just sucks. Elastic's need at least 16 gigs of RAM, so that will be too much here. But as you can see, it works. So any hardware that you can get your hands on, I highly suggest you do that. Yeah, Defcon 0 says no more home drive. Yeah, I agree. Oh, I missed something here. Let me see. Do you have some recommendation to convert some production server like Honeypot, like Mr. Robot? If you're going to deploy a Honeypot and it's your first time and you don't fully understand network segmentation with VLANs and all that stuff, don't do it at home. Just do yourself a favor, go to the cloud, do it in somebody's environment, deploy a Honeypot in Azure or somewhere. I think that's what I would suggest. I actually made a video on this channel where I deployed a lab on in the cloud where I was playing with the Honeypot. Honeypots can be fun, but the information is just too much. Techtronic said GitHub has some cool gems on network security. Yes, that's very true. I'm trying to see if I missed anything here. Bakari said, I feel like I'm stuck and I'm not learning anything new. Is it normal? Yeah, I don't know what you do or your type of work, but for me, I feel like there's not even enough time to learn all the things that are out there because there's so many things that you need to learn, especially if you work in security. Like there's a lot of things that I would like to be learning right now that I'm not learning. And I wish I should be learning. But yeah, there's always not enough time to learn things. One says, I want to make OSCP in a few months, like my first certificate. Could I have opportunity to find a good job with this? You know, to be honest with you, the ability to get a job depends on a lot of factors. And I'll give you an example. When I was at help desk and then I needed to get a sysadmin job, it took me a long time. I actually had to get a CCNA certification just to prove to people that I was actually someone they can trust in their network. And OSCP is not going to guarantee you a job. A lot of people are going to really want to know that you have the experience and what it takes to be a pen tester, especially for the OSCP. I think what's going to get you a job is a combination of getting the right certifications, the right experience, and also having the right connections, knowing the right people and putting yourself out there and connecting with the right people, because there's a lot of people who are qualified out there with certifications and stuff and still hard to get a job, mostly because they don't have the connections. So doing a combination of a lot of things, including connecting with people, getting the right certifications, having a lab like this, and also having the good experience is going to get you the job. Unfortunately, there is no single one thing that's going to help. Spot says, let me see. Do you know what the average power bill a month set up a decent lab? I will tell you because I was stuck on that. So here is my lab setup, right? I have a Dell PowerEdge. Actually, I have one server, which is this one. I run this all the time. And then this is connected to an external NAS device via iSCSI. And then in addition to that, I have a gaming computer. I have a few switches and Cisco Meraki devices. The whole lab costs about $35 to run a month. Not that you would know if you were not monitoring, but I monitor the power usage and I know how much it costs me amperage wise. So I have a device that monitors the power. It's about $35 a month to run all the gear in my server rack right now, which might be a lot of money, but most of that is being consumed by this Dell server right here and the external storage device. If I power this off, this will be cheaper. So as far as electricity power is concerned, you look anywhere from $10 to $40 depending on how much gear you're running. I don't encourage you to run a bunch of like 6 of these power R710s, then you're going to see a significant bill from them. But it's not that bad. And in fact, on this channel, if you look at my Grafana series, I show you how to monitor power usage from iDRAC and send the data to Grafana. It's very simple. And you can actually monitor it in real time. Super easy. I have to start learning ASAP. I have no excuses. Yeah, there's a lot of things to learn for sure. PA says, do you run VMs on your NAS or do you mind sharing some configuration like CPU, RAM, etc? Okay, here is the deal. Depending on which VMs, for a long time, yeah. Here is a VM, for example. This is a domain controller for this whole lab. I used to have 3 of these domain controllers and doing failover and all that stuff. I gave up on that. I just take snapshots of this domain controller and I back it up somewhere. If it crashes and dies, I'll bring it up from backup. I don't need to run 5 of these. But yes, I run most of these from my NAS. There's a catch to that, right? It can be slower depending on your connections. So I had to upgrade my connection from my NAS to this lab here. I put SFPs with fiber links that are at least a gig. That makes things even better. Bundling these connections even makes it even easier. If you just have a single connection via iSCSI and it's just regular Ethernet, you might see some slowness. So there, now we're getting in the weeds of system administration, optimizing this lab to make sure that it works properly. But yes, I run most of these VMs from the NAS. I would like to graduate for the new server that I'm running to actually run on the server itself. Even if they are not SSDs, I don't want the iSCSI connection. I'm actually sick of iSCSI right now. It's not as powerful and fast as I would like. Matthew says he doesn't mind running machines on a NAS. Yeah, for the most part, you will not notice any slowness. The only things that are very intensive are these SIEM solutions that we have to ingest logs in real time. This is where things get interesting, especially with Elastic. Elastic is, for some reason, indexing data over the network, and yeah, that can be intense. Then do you mind sharing the configuration like CPU, RAM, etc? Yeah, for this whole thing here, this is the setup. I don't know why this is not responding. I I have 96 gigs of RAM here. 10G. I have 10G Cisco Meraki gear. I don't encourage anyone to buy and subscribe to Cisco Meraki for learning purposes. But yeah, I have 10G on Meraki. Good stuff. If you use Comcast fiber, you can even get gigabit internet. Makes it even easier. So yeah. Oh, I'm glad that this helps you. Yeah, that's the goal, to have this channel so that we can all learn together. So yeah, I'm glad that this helps you. But let me refresh this thing here. Let's proceed. I'll show you the setup. Setting up labs is definitely going to be the way to go if you want to learn. And setting up a lab at your house, even better. So as you can see, I'm running out of storage here on this lab. This lab have saved me a lot. I'm going to keep it. Then I'm going to create another one for you guys to learn with me. So what this is going to happen is this is going to be a different network. I'm going to create a separate network with its own subnet, its own firewall, which is going to be our PFSense, and its own infrastructure. So for now, if you intend to do this, try to get yourself a decent computer, be it a nice desktop with a lot of RAM and good CPU, or a server. Then we are going to start deploying a hypervisor. In this case, I'm going to go with VMware, or we can go with Red Hat. I haven't decided which one of those. I've deployed both, and honestly, they're all the same. It doesn't matter which one you go with, whether you work with VMware or you just go with Red Hat. We can deploy the open source version of Red Hat virtualization and see it with what is called Overt. They're all identical. And the most important thing is you learn how hypervisors work. Then after that we will start deploying our machines. And we're not going to rely on virtual machines. We're going to deploy things in containers, most likely Docker containers, because that's what everybody's using. And during that process, we'll also later learn automation, not with Salt, but with Ansible, because I think Ansible is easier to learn, even though it's slower than Salt. So that's the setup that we can have. So if you're interested in that, subscribe. This week, I'll make a video of me buying the server. I'll explain more on the specs that I'm looking at, why I chose to buy the server that I did, and why I think it's very important. Then I'll go through the switch that we're going to use. We're going to have a single switch, 24 port, layer 3 managed switch. Then we'll also have a physical PFSense, which I'll also explain the different options that you can do that. For PFSense, we're also going to buy hardware. We're not going to virtualize PFSense. We're also going to have a hardware based, because I want to run a bunch of services like IDS, IPS, and all that good stuff. So it's going to be a separate appliance. So that's going to be interesting. Let's see. Do you have basic understanding of your next network system, and I will follow your channel into hacking stuff. All right, that's good. If you have basic understanding of networking and system administration, you're good to go. You actually have even more fun with the security stuff. I think the security stuff gets to be a blast. It's really fun. Thank you. All right, so guys, that's what I had for today, and it's really great to just chat with people and connect. If you have any questions for me, let me know in the comments. You can also email me. I think I showed you my email address when I was showing you my cloud. It's also on the about for the on the channel, but here's the email that you can send an email to. We can talk about what you're working on and things like that. Otherwise, I'll see you or on our Facebook page, which is really great. The Facebook page is growing like crazy. We get almost 1,200 people, new people every week. So that's awesome. Otherwise, expect a video from me where we'll be buying a Windows, a server, Dell R710 or 20. I don't know which one I'm going to buy yet. And we'll wait for it. Hopefully by next week it will be here. Otherwise, I'll be making a video of the process. Thank you for joining. Otherwise, I'll see you guys next time.